One more second. So, hello everyone. So I decided to do this live stream because there's just a lot that's been brewing, and I decided, you know what, let's have that conversation out loud. Since this is more of a personal topic and can really dive deep into a lot of these things, I guess starting a seed somewhere is gonna be the very next step so that this can blossom and grow into something far beyond than what I can even imagine. So to take this first step is key. So to introduce the whole aspect of everything that I'm doing through this very action, I would like to actually talk about not only what I like to do as a podcast or video cast or however you want to term these types of expressions into the world, but I think we're in a very interesting time period, just in general for most people, to actually look within, see who they really are, and to see what is it about themselves that they can bring out into the world. I've had much time to reflect, and there's so many aspects that I personally just find so, what's the word, odd, that people have not been able to at least grasp or nor bring attention to. It's more that they're just so succumbed to the reality of what they actually participate in that they can't get into the mindset that can actually perceive life outside of their existence or what they know to exist. But that's always the beauty of it all. It's the discovery, the experience of being able to step into something brand new. You've never explored that energy of the full, to be so open-minded, take it out of or merely utilizing the tools, systems, limitations that all partake start somewhere. And I clicked the live again, so everything is live again. For whatever reason, YouTube decides to not allow what the live stream was to be. So I guess there's a problem there, and I guess YouTube, you're gonna have to deal with it. I don't understand, and hey, there's gonna be uphill battles. But I'm here, this is real, this is reality. We're gonna talk, we're gonna discuss, we're gonna draw. Why do I say we're gonna draw? Because I like to actually, as I was saying before I realized that the live stream got cut off, is that this outlet, this extension of what I like to create in Waken Reality is going to take many forms. And a lot of the ways I actually express myself is through more of a visual sense. When I see things, I visualize things. And that has more of a visual first kind of perspective, and it acts like a language to me. I find that tarot itself is a native language of dreamspeak, I call it, where it's the imagery itself. How does it connect to you? How does it connect to the collective? And what does it speak at its own right of its message, its core functionality in which we interact with it in the world? So when we are looking at the visual world, there's so much that we can understand such at ease because of the way we don't use language. But as soon as we got to try to translate something, we have to deconstruct it, translate it into a language so that we can express it for someone else to interpret and digest. So, visions, visuals, artwork, and many of the things in which we see, dreams, all that whatsoever, are always providing us same information, but in its own unique way. So I think the more we can be accustomed to that, the more I think we find the depth that exists in the world. And it's just more for each individual to find what is best for them. Because some individuals might be able to see clearly this aspect of life, while another might have the strength to actually recognize and cultivate that aspect of life. But since in my position, as a lifelong artist and someone who actually dives deep into the esoteric with tons of research and studying in depth, because this is a passion. I'm just so enthralled by the act of knowledge that it's just so interesting. And then on top of that too, being able to discern and really get to the core of it all, I think that's where a teacher decides to say, all right, now this information is present, how can this be turned into something that can provide and help others? Because if that vessel is open, then that opportunity of universe not only allows it synchronistic perspective to be introduced, but it can be experienced. And that experience on a digital platform opens up even more based off the reality in which we're all interacting, because everyone's on their own path, everyone has their own free will, and each their own. If we're going to allow this to be something that we recognize, then we can at least take responsibility where we ourselves are participating. And what do we want to cultivate in that world? So on my end, expressing things visually is going to be always a key core concept. That's why I have this glove on, particularly because I'm about to show off here. If we can get this operating, no problemo. Let's fade this here and darken that a bit, because now I'm able to find where my stylus is and go into talking how we're gonna have essentially a visual lesson. So this is gonna be something that I'll be experimenting more, and as I play with it right now as I speak, I'd like to actually turn down so that you guys can actually see what I draw more. So let's see here. Let's take this, edit this quick, and drop that opacity slightly. Okay, so now you got a sense of me behind the board, which is good. Now I'm gonna implement that in, and voila. Okay, so we're in a visual lesson taking place right now, in which I'm able to discuss all sorts of stuff. So right now, my goal, Awaken Reality, is a very interesting one, because when you're dealing with a lot of different topics and a lot of different subjects, it's not so easy to give it one little gift package in which you can say, yes, this is what we're discussing. And when you have so many outlets, and you have something like a Gemini rising like I do, there's a lot of ways that that can be expressed. So the topics that I'd love to cover over the course of however long this whole project idea develops towards are going to be really interesting. Some are going to be in the moment, while others are going to be just long-term things that I've been writing up or brewing for a while that I think I'd really want to put out into the world. Not just for the sake of the idea, but the concept to bring a discussion to. If it can be expressed and it can then be listened to, that perspective is now contributed to that table. So let's take a little roundabout for things. So with the art that I'm working with, I'm going to explain this little magic trick going on. So I am video recording from my computer here, in which we are then able to plug in the webcam, mic, and then this is pretty much the basis of it. So now on top of that too, I have this Wacom tablet, which essentially is this drawing stylus. So I can overlay it, in a sense, with what comes from here in a way that it's going to be on top of one another. So as I draw, it can act like a screen, a board that's right in front of you. And I find this as a great teaching aid when you're trying to express something visually. Because what I can do from here, I can implement extra things like charts. I can do drawings from scale to size to discussions to bring in actual artwork that I can then deep dive into and explain things from my tarot deck or the symbols throughout all my tarot decks or any of the works that I worked at previously, whether they're esoteric works or just works in general, where I try to encode things from anything from Tesla Tech to Walter Russell and Orgone Energy. The aspects are all there. It's just being able to recognize it. That's something that I find that may be a contribution as somebody who created the art to offer into the world. So this is one of those outlets. So with these tools on hand, not only do I have that expression out there, but now I'm going to have to find a way to bring it out into the world. In which case, we have the internet. So on the internet is a number of things in which I can then take this, stream it, so that we got what? You got YouTube, DTube, I think there's a couple other ones, DLive, which I believe is also a segment of that, but there's then all the other video platforms. I don't have a Facebook. I kind of have an Instagram, but I don't use it. But those are also other options, Instagram. But to ability to do that, I don't have a Twitch either, and I probably should get a Discord, but I'm just so disconnected. I'm nothing from my generation. So being able to actually dive into this, I create a way so that this can be expressed on the internet. Now, because I don't have a social network or actually a very large audience in general, this is more of a experiment on my behalf, because I actually like to not only learn and bring this into reality, but then provide other people the tools to do that. So in a case, I use a program that allows me to overlay this and express this all. Then providing it on the internet, we got on the YouTube and stuff like that, in which case I would like to take those aspects in which they got turned into podcasts, segments, anything that's necessary. So when we got that out there, you have the audience. So the audience here are the individuals watching it. Now, this key component is always going to be important, because I can make hours upon hours of my day going into the efforts I do, but if it doesn't reach an audience, that, I guess, ability to actually provide a reach, provide the ability to nurture it more or to gain momentum to reach a level, there's a degree in which we got to recognize our own limitations of what we can bring to the table, and then the potential of other individuals once they're integrated or a part of the flow. And to build what I'm doing right now is not on the sense to reach individuals at a personal level, but to provide the potential so that individuals can come across this at whatever moment in time that they are on their journey to experience. For example, I'm not going to expect more than maybe 10 people checking this out, but that means that's my expectation from now for the next maybe like month or so. And even then, like, that could change at any point in time, and even 2 years down the line, my expectation, I will not know what is the potential possibility based off all the variables that don't exist as of yet. So there's a degree in which I can see myself in the moment, but I can understand that maybe if I'd like to garden, that you got to start digging. So this is my way of start digging. So for the audience's sake, if you are familiar with my works or anything like that, this is also my way of being able to discuss and put it out there and actually like chat with you. So there will be questions and answers. There will be, if possible, if an audience can be built, I would be more open to do live shows on the spot where I can bring in interactions, where I can bring in a lot of different stuff like that on the fly. Because I think a lot of it's very adaptive, where you got to bring in, it's like cooking, where you want to like, it doesn't have to be so restricted to something, but you can actually blend it in as soon as you start understanding what goes where and how something can help one thing or another. But that's food talk for another day. So anyway, with this audience aspect that I get the opportunity to finally discuss to, I have the difficulty being able to share my stuff out there because I'm just so disconnected from the world that I'm just not a social media user. And that comes into a part when you have such a niche of just living and you just don't really like put it out there. That hole in life is just like something that you can check out, but it's just so hard to come by. Now could have like a very shrine like aspect that exists in the woods, but you also want to share. And if it's your goal for like myself to provide tools or learning mechanisms in which we want to, I guess, grow individually, I want to be able to have that more accessible. So it's not in the sense that it has to be discovered, but I'd like to actually merge not only delivering with the criteria so that it is actually activated upon, not by the individual's sake, but by my delivery so that it's tangible, it's digestible, you do not get lost, and you can pick it up at any time and any go. So for example, I'm not going to dive into the electromagnetics and give you the voltage ratios and calculations when I can instead provide you something more with understanding how the feminine aspect of life and the masculine aspect of life that can be layered at many other levels in nature can be provided as an example so that you can still understand the mechanism of what the topic is about. Another way of actually presenting that too is providing this concept in which you can see here the concept of magnetism and the concept in which we have all sorts of stuff to express here. So this tool here in front of me now can now express a lot of those things, which cannot just be given words. So when you can look at a picture and see 1,000 words, that's always helpful, but can you actually get those thousands of words? That's something I guess you got to ask the artist. So when we're also diving into a lot of different topics here, whether it's the science of things, or maybe let's go more esoteric when we go into how to manifest the ideas of the moon, the aspects of the sky in which we are receiving all sorts of, I guess, disruptions or growth or patterns that we don't even take into consideration because it's so external and bigger picture to us that that's just not within our grasp. So even all the variables that we don't even consider, that's all plays a part. So to integrate that, to bring that into conversation and to connect that with things that we see in our everyday lives are not only going to actually strengthen the idea and concept of educational tools, but we're going to take it on a personal level because each and every one of us can actually tangibly take information, utilize it, and then to make it practical reality. Practical reality is something that we decide to do at our own free will. When we want to create life, when we want to create art, when we want to create something or do something or an idea in itself, when we have a concept that we can perceive, it is up to us to follow through with that. Why? Not only for the sake that it has something to do with us and why we're drawn and attracted to it, but maybe there's a connection to us that we don't actually inherently recognize that I'd like to give more on an intuitive side. Because many of us aren't connected to that end. And I think as long as you get more in tune to who you are and develop and cultivate that, you become familiar with that. And then at the same time too, you can utilize that to truly tap into who you are, truly live the life you're meant to live, and then just explore that to the best of your ability. Because if you think about it, people want to work. But the thing is, you don't want to work, you want to live. When you live, you do it at your own pace, but when you want to supply and do something, you're doing it in exchange. So when you work, you can trade your ability to work as an individual, or you can cultivate what it is that you want to create in your own life in a manner of speaking that might not have returns right away. You might not see a paycheck at the end of the day, but I think when people are in a position to recognize, what if what I was doing with my life is not truly what I want? This is that moment to question it all into reality, to see what other avenues are available, and to actually explore that. Not only to see that this is more of an experimental phase for most of humanity, but for us to actually see the opportunity to not only go back to the roots of who we are, but to recognize the falsities in which we always just promoted and accepted in reality because it was not important or needed to be discussed. So now we bring these truths into reality, and the thing is that if we're all partaking, that this conversation in itself can evolve 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, months from now, years from now, and it could grow and give the ideas to birth something new. So if we're going to allow this to be a platform in itself, what this is, a video or discussion, video, podcast, yeah, terms are great, but if we're always creating something new, maybe taking the words of the past ain't always going to be the best method in which we want to use to describe something. It's the closest thing to it, but it's no differently than creating slang just to give it a word. I mean, you can dissect the whole English language and see many of the things in which we use to describe things are merely just that slang being interpreted in real world, I guess, culture. Depends on where it comes from. But language is another thing for another day. So before we get on tangenty, we're going to expect this to be more of I like to implement a system in which I do this often, that I can do this a lot more often, but at the same time too, I'm still working on my tarot decks, I'm still working on all my illustrations and my drawings, and still doing all the video work and all the other things I have planned, and there's like so much behind the scenes, but I got to, that's not even an option for me anymore. I got to start doing something like this. I got to be able to express myself, have an outlet, because if I do not let that out into the world, there's just so much that just goes unspoken. Not for the sake of me and my role in it, but for the sake that I can't not let it out if I'm aware of it, because then that's my responsibility to hold it in and not to utilize a lot of the resources and tools that are present in front of me to actually make the very most of not only my experience, but of my individual, and to deliver that, not only for the promise of my own passions, but to offer something that is beyond myself, because truly, there is so much beyond each and every one of us that this world, it's always going to be a learning curve. It's always going to be an expansive, growth-driven experience in which not only do we get to partake in what's unraveling around us collectively, but we actually have the opportunity to interact, grow, recognize so many aspects in which we are tied and connected to, and pick up along the way, that we can truly shape our lives to be so much for the better. So with that said, there's a lot of things that I guess I could speak about in particular. I think I have a list here. So I guess my core aspect to this all is, if I don't do this, someone else will. If I don't do this, who will do it like me? That is the question that can't be answered, because each of us are all unique and we have our own gifts, and I think a lot of us can bring so many different flavors to the table. It's just, without a doubt, there's a number of ways you can do something. But when I try to give a good articulate expression of something, it's just something that comes natural to me, and to honor that, I think I need to allow that nature to be shared, so that it's not just something that I can utilize for personal factors, but something that can go beyond that, because I do want to cultivate something a lot more than I can actually truly express right now. But to start somewhere, that's always the door opening. That's the key, turning and saying, yes, I'm choosing to go through this door. So that's something that's important to me. And it's something that I see because we are on a path of being able to not only reinvent the world that we are all living by, but to provide others examples on what is possible. And to do so, there's a degree of collective manifestation in which, like the 100 monkey effect, that if an idea becomes unfulfilled, that it will find its way through the concept of someone who can perceive it and to bring it and nurture it into reality. And those who can tune into that are definitely going to act, because a lot of these things that do come in, these ideas, they have not only merit, but they are potentially answers to a lot of questions that people don't have the question for yet. Because when we dive into a creative realm or we dive into the potential, we are working with a speculative idea in which things can unfold. And if you can actually see and understand the variables and directions that things can take in terms of potential, we can understand, A, is there a higher, bigger picture that is more divinely guided? Or is this just more that we need to take more adaptive pursuit in the moment and present so that we can nurture the best of our ability with what we have so that each and every day can lead us to where we'd like to be? It's always going to take us there, but that alignment is going to give you in the right direction. You might as well have your compass pointing where you need to go, and even if you just meander a little bit, at least you got a sense of who you are and what you want to do and what's important to you. But without anything, it's never the destination, it's always the journey. So always embrace that, without a doubt. And I think many of us who are tapped into allowing that collective voice to come through, we can nurture that in a way that is not only seen, but is actually, what's the word I'm looking for here? It is essentially like a botanical garden where we all take part in caring for something by giving it an ecosystem in which it can exist in. So even if it's not in season, we can allow something to exist because we provide it the proper environment to not only grow and be sustained, but we care for it, not only for the sake of ourselves, but for those who want to experience it as well. So that's kind of like a good modality to see that this is not only just a responsibility, but it's a calling for those who are willing to step up on it. Now, there are individuals who are going to be able to take this with ease. There's individuals who see that their more role in life is to take care of others. There's always going to be a role for individuals, and they can only be the ones to decide that. If you're letting your power be given away, or if you're letting an influence take over what your potential can be, then you need to take into question how much of yourself are you allowing yourself to live? Is that something that you'd like to cultivate more of, or is that something that you'd like to see is driving more divisive factors in your life that you don't see as fit for your nature to experience? It's when you take the cement and you just try to have this tree continuously grow, but then you keep adding more cement. Chances are you're going to run into some hardships, but those hardships are only more bringing contrast to what's working for you, what's not working for you, where you align, and what's not best for you. Because sometimes we need to learn the hard way, and that's okay. I think right now in the collective, we're learning so much about how to be responsible for ourselves and those closest to us. And maybe take into consideration more about how we can take our health on a more holistic level and to understand things not just because we're told, but because it actually matters for us. Not for the sake of knowing, but for the sake of those around us that we are responsible for, or for the very factors of being able to offer more than just ourselves in the world around us. It's not hard, especially when you can actually just go with your flow and find your own nature, because that's really what it comes down to. There's so many knowings and blessings that people intuitively have gifts of, that they can provide others, or it comes through them so easily, or that it just delivers in their vessel of a human experience to another human experience. And that experience comes in because of the bigger picture that we're all entwined. So when we're seeing these blessings, we understand that some of them are signs, some of them are giving us the opportunity so that we can pick up experiences or pick up things that may help us down the road. So we need to also embrace the journey, honor the journey, and respect who we are, and as honest as possible, see us, see who you are at a level that is going to not only make you proud, but is going to give you the promise and security that the outside world could provide, but comes from a state within that is almost infinite. And it gives you that clarity so that no matter what comes your way, that present moment is there for you to see how do you implement a solution. When you have the concept of any challenge or face any problem, it's always creative problem solving that gets you out of it. It's not just the sake of just pushing through, but there's maybe other directions, other avenues, and maybe even ways that we have not even thought of before outside the box that truly not only implements good solutions, but has the potential to actually affect tons of people, depending on our connection and social, interactions. But everyone has their own way, everyone has their own light, and I think that we can actually hold the same principles on an individual level as we interact with our family, our friends, the coworkers, many of the individuals that we see in our everyday lives, as well as on a scale that is something more like, let's say, you reach an audience. For example, I would love to reach an audience on a platform that provides and delivers something that is nurturing, so that it's not just myself expressing to an empty vessel, but interacting with other voices who are partaking in a journey that can not only contribute to the conversation but evolve it into something that is more needed for that moment, so that individuals not only can encounter some, I guess, wise words of wisdom, but we can actually just get that on the fly through intuitiveness that we don't even recognize is so synchronistic. It provides the doorways and gateways without even us asking. So just another thing to consider, food for thought, so to say. So with this individual reach in action, we are all playing a part. We're all setting a wave, and we're all droplet in this ocean in which we're all going and flowing. We have the ability to rise up together and make tsunamis, as well as be able to be settled and clear, relax, and reflect. And when we all partake in a group, you have free will. Yes, we're made of mostly water, but you are a vessel that can recognize the I am and move forward with taking action on that. So when we are taking an action, you know that it's partially your responsibility, but partially something that you're bringing to the table. When you bring something to the table, that's something that comes from you. That is your nature, your nurture, your love, your passions, your energy, your action. When you're trying to create a stew, you want to contribute and put your share in. And when you want that flavor, you want that flavor to come out. You want to see the fruits of your labors. And that's something that actually is challenging most people in the world, because in a day and age where we're oversaturated by social media and a lot of the things that do occur on it, it's so easy to get lost. And it's not only easy to get lost for individuals to connect, but we get lost in things that aren't even worth our time, or let alone are just there just to keep us like a vacuum, so that we give our time, energy, and focus towards something that is not only counterproductive, but it actually takes our life force, energy, and potential, so that we don't cultivate the things that maybe we're more, I guess, drawn to bring into the world. So we actually are facing something that is more of a existential crisis of being able to recognize reality more as a living concept in which we can also learn by, because an experience itself provides all the lessons necessary without the character, story, or even elements necessary, because it in itself tells it through the motions, through the way that the stream itself carries the water through to the ocean. It is a flow that not only recognizes that this mechanism, this drawn to, this attraction, this repulsion, these natural flows, they all have a story to tell. And what we draw from that is always up to the individual, because many of us can walk away and be like, wow, that was a great movie. Others can walk away and be like, wow, that actually provided something of this, or this provided a commentary on that. Or even the third option, wow, that movie was nothing but programming. But that concept of being able to step beyond that is the willpower in which we can explore and actually not only bring into locality, but to nurture in a way that each of us are always picking up on it. Just like astrology in itself, that art in itself, or even any practice really, can be cultivated over years and years and years of providing it in other people's hands, so they not only take a unique spin on it, but they do so in a way where they actually see, all right, this works for me, that doesn't work for me. And you get trial and error that brings and constitutes so many new, I guess, developments that we can almost relate it almost to like coding, because we can code and share that code in an open source manner, and someone else can contribute, and it can become something brand new overnight. So we all really can implement something and actually like share it, not only in a way where it's just more like a vehicle, and this, for example, how I speak right now is a platform of potential. You can do so in a way where your interactions with individuals are just that spark of light, that inspiration, those things that are necessary for you to really not only take the very merits of life, but to provide the fruits and seeds for future generations. So when we are holding that back, we end up in almost like an echo chamber where if we aren't able to express that or live the life authentically, that we end up not only getting reflections of maybe the state that we're in, but we're also experiencing, I guess, reminders, whether it's through dreams or memories or patterns or things that come up to you, so that you kind of get the picture with the universe giving you little nudges of experience. Now, that's one way of interpreting it, but if you don't allow yourself to actually explore it, that echo chamber only strengthens, and you yourself end up turning within on yourself, where it only actually hinders you, and that's not what you want. So I think this message here today is very much trying to bring inspiration to individuals so that they can not only actually pursue a path that is more true to who they are, but to honor it in an authentic manner and not to give it the flack that people have in the past because they're too busy with this or that. And I think that we're in an opportunity where so much individual development that we can all hermit, go within and understand and kind of do kind of like a spring cleaning, because we haven't done that in who knows. And maybe with enough people doing that, the collective motion of what can actually unravel through these developments are not only going to be game changing, but I think that we're going to see just as much developments from human free will participation that shapes the world, just as much as individuals. Ding ding. As individuals are shaping themselves. Difficult to get out with a barking dog. Girl. We hear you. Okay, so we're going on to around maybe almost the hour mark in about 10. So I'd like to actually try to hit a couple other points. So with this show, this is going to be maybe more of a long format. And let's see, because I am not actually actively discussing with a drawing, we're going to switch back so you see this a little better. So now, one thing I wanted to bring in is conscious creation, is being present while we're actually creating something new, or while we're diving into something, anything really. Creation is a very broad and vague term because you can create a meal, you can create a dish, you can create an idea, you can create an experience. There's so many ways in which you yourself can contribute something of a unique expression that stems from your core, shakes your interests, and contributes on an external level. That's what we recognize. And when we see that in the world affect others, we are moved by it because we actually understand on a personal note how we can set a wave in an ocean that we actually recognize makes a difference. And it's all about those motions of right place, right time. Everyone's on their own journey. Everyone has their own connections. Everyone has their own attractions, magnetisms, and all sorts of things that just make us kind of tick. So we need to really just see that, all right, each their own, everyone their own experience, but if we can all do it in a manner that if one thing can be taken away, it's to be present. Because when we're present, we provide ourselves receptivity. It's asking ourselves to listen, but not just listen to what's going on around us, but to listen within. How do we feel what the dreams are saying, what the little hunches are saying, or maybe something comes to labors of what I just, it is something that is not necessarily needing to exist every single moment at this exact time, but it provides itself when it's needed. Much like intuition, but on a more practical level. School systems to go beyond that, to see the out there and stuff.